Welcome to New Game Plus, a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name's Kenny.
Nolan.
And this is episode 280.
280.
Have you ever dreamed of building your own video game?
No.
Like an actual dream, or
But
thought about
what-
the possibility?
What also, though, about that boy that's like, have you ever dreamed that...
Did you ever?
That's my favorite classic YouTube
that
video.
you would
so
ever
good.
be,
So
that you
funny.
would be doing me. Introducing the Game Builder Garage from Nintendo. What? Yeah, now anyone can learn the basics of game design and visual programming with step-by-step lessons created by the minds at Nintendo for the Switch.
I'm mad.
Why are you mad?
I mean,
Because why didn't I have that when I was growing up? It's too late for me now. I'm not gonna
Okay.
do that.
yeah.
also, what's it gonna? Is it gonna actually be a playground of games that people have made? Because I'm curious if this is a dabble with something fun where you can make your own thing, or if this is a we're taking on Roblox because that's how you actually become an empire.
What's Roblox? And also RPG Maker. Been out.
Having difficult following you, negative Nolan's moms, but this is different than
Leak?
both of those things. I believe I don't. Oh, the RPG Maker is a different thing. If you have you either of you seen the announcement trailer for this?
No.
No.
Who do you think you're talking to?
Y'all, y'all know what Unity is?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good, because I don't.
It's a
really,
game
but-
engine.
Right?
Yes.
This is similar to that in that you've got these kind of like box squares with words in them, and then you're supposed to connect them and link them. So there's tutorials, there's lessons, but then you can within there build games of your own and share them with other gamers.
And it's on
Yeah.
Switch as a game on Switch. Like it's a game.
So it's Minecraft,
Yeah.
but they're also trying to what I'm curious is what the ecosystem for sharing games is. Because if they're actually letting people like make games that people will consume and paid
Yes.
content
Does
like
Nintendo own that?
fully, then 100% all they've done is like knock off the Roblox model, which makes sense because
What is
that
Roblox?
thing
so
is
Nolan,
huge.
you know
You're
when
too
there's
old and he's too
Hey,
old to understand.
Did you just
Nolan.
call somebody old?
you know when there's construction, you're driving, there's construction, you can't go this way, the road is blocked, you've got to go around.
I know that. He's saying Roblox with an X.
Right.
What's that?
And the crazy thing is, I know it by name, but I do not also. I
Same.
also do not know what it is.
I
but
always
it's
thought it was-
supposedly like the new Minecraft for kids or something, right, Kenny?
Okay.
Yeah, sort of. It's
Okay.
a super popular
Yeah.
with the youngins game platform that is sort of a series of games within this ecosystem where people have come in, made a bunch of different games, and you can kind of pick and choose and play any of them. And it's huge. It's blown up. It's like the next big thing, or has been. I don't
Well,
know if-
Nintendo's thing
how much
sounds like the next
its
big
legs
thing.
are. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like they're learning and saying like if people want to just make content and we can
Profit.
like yeah profit off of that
Basically.
somehow, like let's go to town. So I just was curious.
But it might be the next cardboard thing,
Right. Oh, it
Labo?
could totally flop.
Labo.
Which
And especially with Nintendo, like
Right.
it can be great or it can be a total miss.
Right, it can be either or somewhere in the middle. But what is
No.
always admirable about Nintendo stuff is that they're always trying this weird stuff, and so you've got to applaud them for that. And I like the idea. Yeah, Nolan, it missed you as a kid, okay, but
Yeah,
it can hit
man.
other kids.
they don't deserve it.
Why? Because they got something more advanced, and you were just stuck playing with bubbles.
So dumb.
Hey, before
It's such a stretch.
never mind, just finish.
No, go ahead. Okay, then I'll interrupt. I've been terrified of this episode all week
Okay.
because of how you said the game name last week, and if that continues, I'm gonna lose my mind.
No,
and I hope
that's
it
not
doesn't
why I'm
happen.
worried. What I was going to
That's why
say
I'm
is
worried.
both of you are guilty because these guys, if you listen to the podcast, last week we played a game called Lindsay Soup and it's a crawl game. And these two, Dustin especially, is addicted to it and probably didn't even play Bubble Bobble because he was playing DCSS, DSC all week long, probably until we started recording this episode. And Kenny, you did too.
I don't want to talk about it.
Like in our retro game of the week, Bubble Bobble.
Overview.
Bubble Bobble. I'm trying to say it as boring as possible because, is a 1986 platform arcade game that you looked really shocked when I said that, Dustin. Did you not realize it was a platformer?
No, I did. I just
No,
is a 19.
Yeah,
Same.
I'm ramping into it.
Pick it up, bro.
You gotta set some.
We got things to do, places to be, bubbles to pop.
This is published, developed, and published in Japan at least by Taito. Published in the U.S. by Rumstar. Later released to a number of consoles, including the NES, which is the version of this game that we played, but originally a big arcade title. In Bubble Bobble, you play not the titular characters. Their names are not Bubble or Bobble, but almost.
That'd be cute. That would be cute.
It would. You play as a tiny little dragon, a cute dragon, I'll say, even named Bub or Bob, depending on which player you're playing as.
Say that's titular.
Yeah,
it's close enough.
Nicknamey. It's nicknamey titular. And you have set out onto this adventure to save your girlfriends who are in the Cave of Monsters.
Is that story in the NES version? Because I didn't see nothing about that.
I didn't beat it, but I don't think so. I mean,
sort of at like the end screen, you get a little bit of that.
I would imagine that, but there's no story at the front.
No.
Does it show like Metroid style, like, or Mario, like Peach runs out on the screen?
As a puzzly arcade platform, or as a puzzly platformer rather, there's not a lot of actual story here, like at all.
Yeah, it's a silly story anyways. What the heck?
Right.
Like, I read that like way after the fact I'd played this game this week, and I was like, okay, stop. Bubble Booby.
That would have been an interesting.
Bub and Bob is cute though. The character names. So as Bub and Bob, you are dropped into these platforming levels where you're playing one screen at a time. This is not side-scrolling or vertical really platforming, because you've got kind of one level, and you're navigating around that level, blowing bubbles, trying to take on all of the beasties that have shown up in that level and want to take you out.
Being that it is an arcade game, we really have to limit what we talk about up front, or the episode will be over. Because
I'll save the mechanics.
It is
when we get into gameplay.
It is a very minimalistic kind of arcade game. One of the early arcade games. I never played it in the arcade. I never even saw it in the arcade that I can recall.
I feel like this is probably a super rare one now.
Well, now, yeah, but arcades are super rare as well.
Yeah.
I knew the NES cartridge
That's
as a
what I
really
knew.
popular game, but I also was slightly after the height of kind of arcade popularity and was right smack dab in the middle of the NES sort of defining what I knew as gaming. So, but this was a very popular game in its day, and even to today, you know, you hear lots of people when you talk about this that are like, "Oh man, this was the number one or number two played game of my childhood," because it was a really popular one.
The designer of this game, it's really funny to me. He was hired by Taito, and he was like, man, Namco is kicking y'all's butts. And so he thought Taito's games were kind of crappy, and so he was like, we want to make a good one. And this was the product, and it, like, the reception was insane. It was so successful.
Gameplay.
This game is very, very, very simple. You can shoot bubbles, and you can jump.
I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Nope.
Well, there's more to what you do with that, but that is the only thing that you can do.
Yeah. So when you pick it up, it's pretty straightforward. And so with arcade ports, I pay attention to like how it plays, because on consoles they usually change quite a bit, and sometimes it won't feel like an arcade title, right? This one totally does. I don't know what they changed. I mean, I know they added levels, I think, and maybe a couple tweaks here and there in terms of like collectibles, but I think it's straight up the arcade game on a console, which is very good if, one, you liked the original, and two, I think it's very easy to just pick up and play. So I appreciated that this week, definitely.
We played a good amount of arcade games on the podcast. This feels like some of the classics in the
Yes.
simplicity. So Frogger, Dig Dug, some of those others that really has pretty much one thing that you're doing, and then you're doing that over and over and over again. And
Yes.
Ken, you said it's not left to right scrolling platformers, which a lot of NES, Super Nintendo platformers are. And you also said that it wasn't vertical, but it is.
The levels don't scroll vertically, but you do have the interesting mechanic of your
Screen wrapping.
character's ability
Yeah,
to either drop through the floor and then come out the ceiling,
right.
or to bounce your way up through the ceiling and then come out the floor,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
And so you're also wrong, because the levels most certainly do scroll vertically. You don't scroll.
Between the levels switching,
Hey, Kenny,
that doesn't count.
If anyone is Mr. Technical, you are, and I want you to come correct to this.
That's
No,
something
that's
he
the
would say.
dumbest thing.
Don't
You do
It's
not
it's one level and then
at
it's
a
the
time.
next level.
That scrolls what? How does it get there?
It doesn't matter that it physically scrolls into the screen. It could cut in just as easily.
But does it?
Functionally, it's not a top-down scrolling game. It's a totally different thing.
Getting caught in the weeds here. You shoot enemies with the bubbles. They get trapped in the bubble. It's a one shot on you and on them.
And then when they are in a bubble, they float
They float
vertically.
vertically
Sometimes
on the same stage. And you have to clear the stage. So shooting an enemy is not enough. They get captured in a bubble, and you must pop that bubble. Again, simple to understand, but every stage is going to throw different enemies at you, more enemies, fewer enemies. But the interesting thing about this game isn't so much the enemy type or what they do. It's more so the stage design and how creative they get with what the stage looks like. So the first one, very simple. It's like 3 platforms that you can jump through and that's it. You have like 4 enemies. Later, I mean, it just ramps slowly, and then it gets crazy. They start doing pixel art, like a lot of arcade games did that kind of thing. I feel
One of them wrote the word popcorn.
Yeah.
Like,
ouch.
ouch. It becomes one of those like lucid dreams, or like
Kind of.
drug. There's something weird going on for sure, because there's a lot of it that just doesn't make any kind of sense. There's a Valentine's themed one that's hearts, like pink heart. And I do agree that is where the variety and the uniqueness comes into play, because they do give you different enemies that have different patterns, flight patterns or movement patterns, but that's really not much. You're still just bubbling them, and then you're bobbling them. Where it becomes different is the stage design.
Yes.
Right. And that's because of the way the platform mechanics work. Because
work or don't work.
Well, yeah, it's strange in how it implements, and it always feels a little funny to me, but it is consistent in kind of how it does it. But these platforms will let you, like a lot of platform games, will let you jump through the bottom platform.
Like Smash Brothers.
Ugh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
not then drop through a platform that you're on.
Unlike
so if you're
Smash
moving
Brothers.
platform to platform, you can only move vertically.
Yes.
It
Vertically.
makes moving down be something that has to happen by finding an open space in the screen and falling back down, or jumping out the top of the
Yes.
level and then sort of starting over. And
So-
so that's the primary mechanic that they use to define where you can go in the stage,
Mhm.
define where the enemies are going to be grouped, and define with your bubbles how you're going to get around.
Yes, and that is also how there's a commitment factor to going up the stage. And on some stages, they've designed it in a way that you better know what you're doing or you're going to get stuck or you're going to have a hard time getting out. I don't remember the number, 9. I don't know. There's one stage early on that I hated because there are 2 containers on the left and right side of the screen, and you can jump on top of bubbles. You can jump your way out of a hole, but it's really annoying. And if you have enemies flying across the screen, it's super annoying. And so I had to come up with a strategy on that one. So it's just, it's such a weird thing to have vertical, Dustin. Yeah, I'll say it. Vertical scrolling, or screen wrapping more accurately, vertically than horizontally, like Pac-Man. At first I didn't get it. I didn't like it. I was getting hit like off screen. Like I would jump down and an enemy would be going up and we would get hit off screen. I'd be so frustrated. But
yeah, because the enemies also do that same thing.
Yes.
We said your character does, but the enemies too are falling or moving up as well. So it gets a little chaotic sometimes. A lot chaotic sometimes.
Yep.
I think it's important that we don't skip over a huge mechanic, and that is that you can jump on some of your bubbles. And for me, the entire week, the 5 minutes that I played outside of Dungeon Crawl was
literally
so inconsistent of when I could get that to. I never found a rhythm. I just ended up smashing, spit, bubble, jump, spit, jump, whatever, really quickly, so that you could jump, because you only have a limited amount of frames to be able to jump on your bubble, or you fall through it, or it pops, or whatever. And so you must use them, especially in some of the later stages. You must use those bubbles as platforms, and you can't just stay on it and rise. You've got to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving if you want to get any kind of verticality without any kind of already natural platformers that are there.
Yes. Yeah. I'll tell you how to do it. You want to know?
Yeah.
It's dumb. You hold A instead of like jumping, like just tapping A. If you're holding A when you like land on the bubble, you'll bounce. It's really hard to get the rhythm down, but I finally did.
Really?
From Dustin's face, I realized he didn't ever actually realize that as the mechanic, and that would have made this game 10 times harder than it already is. I'd imagine you struggled.
Well, again, I didn't play much, but
he didn't play
in the
he played.
No, I did. I played enough. I played what Bobble needs to be able to understand what Bobble be.
I don't know. What Bobble be? Go ahead.
I think we're saying a similar thing, maybe. Okay.
Go
Well, there are a few letters that you can collect.
We were saying something different, actually.
Yeah, because I was gonna say I was gonna say what you're gonna say, which was
right. No, talk about the letters.
You grab a few letters and you have no idea what you're spelling out for the longest amount of time.
No, because even when you do, it's the worst word choice of all time.
It is.
Extend
and then flashing. Beep beep.
Nice, and then it like goes all over the screen, and
it makes no sense.
Supposed to get hyped up. I wonder if that's a translation thing.
I think it definitely
and it's like
is.
They're saying like past the level or something, and they needed a word that was sort of that same like length, but like that was a terrible word choice.
Again, I want to stress that I think a lot of this stuff is like one of those drug dreams that people have, because with the colors, the variety of levels, the monsters that are coming at you, the whole idea of bubbling people in the first place, and then with this extend being the letters that you collect to get an extra life. And then, I know this is a separate thing, but I'm just, it came to mind, the idea that I don't think we even said this, every time you eliminate an enemy, they don't just disappear, they float back down as a food item. A lot of times a fruit, but sometimes a martini glass, sometimes a shape of something, like just the most random things.
Yes.
Yeah. You had the little McDonald's French fries.
Yeah.
I saw red little French fry cup with yellow fries coming out of it.
It's not an M because I think they were afraid they'd get in trouble, so it's a W. It's so funny.
There are actually a lot of collectibles that will increase your high score.
Dude.
More than the arcade, I believe. Maybe not, maybe less. I don't know. But not just like collect fruit, which was like every arcade game was like get the fruit, points. Why fruit? I don't know. But there are actual items that improve your gameplay.
And
Like
a
projectiles. Is that
bunch
what you're?
of
Oh
them.
no.
Yeah, way more than there should be. The game's actually, I think the game's way deeper than it looks. I really do. Because, don't give me that face. I played it more than you. I should know,
it's
Mr.
deep.
Crawl.
Yeah, it's 100 levels deep.
No. It's got, okay, so for example, there are shoes. And if you get the shoes, it speeds you up like ×3. It's not even like double. It's
They're
so
crazy fast.
But it's very good. It's very, very good. However, it's also so easy to get hit, and when you die, when you lose that life, you lose that power up. So I wasn't doing the continue feature. I talked about this in Discord with some of our listeners that were playing along. There's a continue feature and like a password system where you can keep going on the NES. I don't think that's in the arcade, unless maybe it was with quarters. But I was starting over fresh every time, like hardcore mode, because I really enjoyed learning and getting better at some of these stages and approaching it differently. I eventually did continue just to see like what future stages look like, but it's almost like last week's game in that each run can be different, but depending on RNG or depending on how quickly you clear the stage. And so it's not just most.
You're saying this is a roguelike?
Most arcade games are the exact same every single time. Exact same. This game is not. It's definitely not. The enemy patterns are, and you can learn them. However, all you have to do is kill one differently than the last time or go to a different part of the stage to approach it differently. And I really enjoyed that aspect of this game.
I will agree with you if you agree with me on one thing.
No.
Well, it's a simple thing that I think we could all agree on. This game is like last week's. I'll agree with you. It's also a Metroidvania.
Yes.
Okay, there. It's a
It's also
Metroidvania.
like Dark Souls. No, seriously.
And Monster Hunter.
And Monster Hunter and The Last of Us 2. But I feel like the items that change gameplay are really cool, and it's cool that it's different. It can be different every time.
They're really cool, but you don't see them often.
No, you don't.
Some of these power-ups happen very, very rarely. Like, very rarely. You've got, let's see, you've got all kinds of things. You've got parasols, you've got that little cross thing, you've got treasure boxes, you've got the Book of Thunder, the Book of Death, the crystal ball, the blue ring, the green ring, the wizard staff.
Hey, I've got a lot of those things in Lindley's
I told
Dungeon
you.
Crawl.
I told you.
There's so many of these.
Yeah.
And they all do different things. There's some screen clears. There's something that shoots out a bunch of stars that do random stuff.
The parasol
There's
skips
items
you
that give
3
you other
stages.
items. Yeah, it's
really
crazy,
good.
but they don't like lean into that much. It's just this sort of like bonus stuff sort of sprinkled in there that you get. And I think how often you get those may be related to how effective you're being on levels, because there are bonuses where if you pop a bunch of bubbles all at once, like if you get your bubbles to cluster and then pop them, you're getting a lot more points, and I believe unlocking some other like bonusy kinds of stuff.
You
and
get
I wasn't
drops.
great at this game.
Yeah,
so I didn't see that as much as I would have liked to, which is maybe why I have the complaint. But I feel like they put all these cool, interesting items in there that could have been part of the puzzles, and then I just didn't see them very often. They were just sort of like peripheral.
The game was designed to be, I think, multiplayer first.
Yes.
Because and that's interesting because we didn't get to do that. I didn't. But I really, really wanted to. I could see it being so much fun. I was reminded of our Turtles experience on NES, Dustin, where we beat that game, and like multiplayer NES could be so good, and I think this game would be great.
I agree. I would have had a ton more fun. Games like this, where they are a little arcadey and a little bit samey. I know every level is different, but you get variations of the same enemies. You do have a couple of cool things that I think we had to talk about, the fire orb and the water and the lightning orbs, whatever. But beyond that, you're kind of competing against yourself for high score. And that's not nearly as rewarding as having somebody else sitting beside you and knowing one fruit's going to drop and only one of us are going to get to it. or if I hit that big group of guys, I'm going to be able to score all these points where they can't. Or hey, we can throw these bubbles for each other and bounce off of them in ways that make it a little more accessible. I don't know. It was very intentionally a 2-player game, to the point of you get a different ending, the only proper ending for the game, when you play it 2 players. It's a separate experience than when you play it 1 player. And they really, really leaned into that, which I found super fascinating. I think that was a great choice.
No, I'm not sure if you knew, there are 3 different endings. And so that's unique,
That's
being an arcade game with 3 different endings. Unfortunately, if you beat it 1 player, the win screen tells you to come back and beat it with a friend. It
Go
pretty
get
much
a friend.
Yeah, it pretty much
Get a friend and
chastises
try
you.
again, loser.
Get out of your
That's pretty
house.
much what it
Don't-
says.
Don't play a video game alone.
And then you can beat it with 2 players, and then on various versions, you can play more of a hard mode, a hardcore mode that either speeds up the enemies, or it does a few of those tweaks to make it even more difficult. And then that's the true ending, where you not only save your girlfriends, but you save your parents too.
Yeah, the difficulty curve, final thing I'll say, is questionable. It starts out reasonable, makes sense, and then it goes insane. The one stage will quickly, and then one stage will be like, seriously, that was it? And then another one you look at and you're like, there's no way, I can't do this. However, I am pretty proud of how far I got without using continues this week. Ask me.
How far did you
But
get?
Kenny always has a thing that he's doing, and then he'll keep talking if I do.
How far did you get, Nolan?
66.
On 1?
Oh.
Yeah. Without a continue.
Wait, without a continue?
I told you, I played this game. Actually, I don't know if I told you yet. I played this game a lot this week.
Why, when you could have played Dungeon Crawl?
You shouldn't
Y'all
be
are
that
addicts.
good at this.
You need help.
I got, I think, to around 50, but 100% only using continues, because I was like terrible at the game and like die, shoot, go down the screen, try again. And I will say, very nice quality of life that I don't think was on the original NES, because the original NES was true password system. I did play on the NES Classic this week, the little mini.
Oh, interesting.
Which is
It's nice.
basically the same, but it remembers your progress. So if you're going in and continuing, you don't have to like actually enter a password.
No, I
to
think
start
that's
there.
the same here on the normal.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah,
And that may have been how it originally worked. I don't know.
So
But it might be a difference of if you turn off the system, because there may be like memory versus long-term memory, which is probably what it comes down to. But regardless, it was very nice because I could just scroll down, keep playing. Yeah, real welcome.
And I have no idea. I did not try to get far by
I know,
myself.
you were playing a different game.
And when I knew that I just needed to get farther in the game, I just shamelessly used save states to just get far enough to know what I'm doing.
The game ends on a pretty fun boss fight that I don't know if either of you saw. I thought they did a really nice job with it.
Can't just have one boss fight in a game.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to point out.
For as 100? Oh my god.
For as good as they did with that boss fight, and I do think they did a great job with it. I felt like it would have been really welcome if they'd done one of those every 10 or 20 levels or something as you were going. Could have added a little bit more sort of just depth and a change on those mechanics. But regardless, it was a game.
You can't.
It was a game.
You can't know where you're going before you start, or you've got to have a landing.
What
plan.
happens when you don't, though? Sometimes you start a sentence,
just happens?
And like Michael Scott, I don't know where it's going to land, and I'm not willing to
You're
talk
doing it
through
now.
a paragraph, so I bail.
Or something.
Aged.
Let's get straight to it. We don't have to talk about. We can talk about graphics and other stuff, whatever. But the music.
Okay, I knew y'all were gonna say it's repetitive.
Well, I don't.
Sure.
You can't disagree with that. It's 100 levels of the same song that is only like a 12-second loop, if that much.
But at least
And
it's good.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
It is good and it's catchy, but it's much too short to be an infinite loop. If
Yeah,
you're gonna have
it's
something
super
that short that loops like per level, you mix it up, you do a couple of different songs, it breaks it up. Otherwise,
Yeah,
however many levels of that
you
straight.
can't you can't even stop it. Even if you
No.
press pause,
They
it continues
should've-
to play.
They should. That's really
You can
funny.
mute your TV. I did that at one point.
That's the only thing you can do.
I actually did mute it and play music at one point because I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I get it. They should have done a Tetris thing. I wrote this down. Like, Tetris had at least 3 tracks that you could at least cycle through if you wanted something
Absolutely.
different. Something like that would have been cool.
100% agree, Nolan. Literally, my notes for the show literally say even Tetris had track selection options, and Tetris songs were a lot longer, and they
Yeah.
still realized repetition would drive people crazy.
This
was
pretty
like
repetitive. It's so
a
bad.
tenth of a Tetris song, maybe less, and just looping forever.
I think they got something and they were like, "Oh, this is good. Let's
Leave it."
just leave it and loop it." And that was really their decision because it's not bad. Depending on which version you listen to, the arcade version is a little bit more Piercy than the NES version, but it's a good track. It fits the theme 1000%.
Yeah.
But it is really short and long at the same time. They might have it looping in hell. I don't know.
They might.
Can we talk about the kind of game this is? Because it felt different to me than a lot of other NES games. This sort of puzzly one level at a time, clear it, go on to the next one, clear it again, repetitious thing feels to me almost like a phone game. But this was 20 or 30 years before, I don't know, before phones existed. Maybe I'm off track.
Years before you came out.
Before like real cell phones existed.
No, if it was 30 years, this came out in like 86, that would be 2006
And six.
Right.
Yeah, which is about when smartphones became a thing.
Smartphones came out in 2007, 6.
Oh, what are y'all smartphones came out?
Snake.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm not
know.
talking about early like.
Why are we talking about phone games? This is not a phone game.
Because
Kenny
it
thinks it's a
reminded
phone
me of
game.
It reminded me of a phone game.
So, okay. So you think it was ahead of its time?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's a good thing in this case because I don't necessarily like the whole do it on repeat again and again sort of mechanic that a lot of games, phone games especially, lean on. But maybe it's the arcade talking, maybe it's me being in 2021 talking, but it doesn't feel like other NES games. This game was novel on a lot of fronts. They did really unique mechanics, and I don't know what I'm trying to get at. This game feels special.
Here's what I was trying to get at, and I missed my point to actually really give you a hard time because I knew something was wrong about what you said. Yes, the first iPhone came out in 2007. There might have been a smartphone before then.
Yeah.
So yes, that's 20 years, but you said or 30, which would have been 2016, Kenny, which is
some people didn't get their first cell phone until 2016.
All right. I don't think it feels like a arcade. I mean, you've got me messed up. It doesn't feel like a phone game. Okay, but I will give you this, that it is unique for an NES title, and like when you look at the NES catalog of games as a whole, Bobble is very unique, and I really think we missed a huge portion and be able to like talk about how it's aged by not playing multiplayer. I really think we missed out on that. But yeah.
Oh, it's aged though. Like any other time we've talked about a game on the show where 2-player functionality is a part of the game or a big part of the game or small part of the game, we've always mentioned no, that's part of a negative aging factor, that when you create couch co-op games and then it just becomes harder to play 20 years later, 30 years later when people finally have phones.
Game designers didn't realize that everyone was going to be a recluse, that the internet was going to ruin social relationships.
You can do net play, and I think people in Discord did this week actually. I didn't do it. I should have, but it would be fun. We didn't mention graphics quickly. So good. Like I think they're so good.
Why?
Because what?
Here's what I think you're saying, and I could be
us.
wrong. Here's what I think you're saying. I think the visual style is correct for the kind of game it is. Like it nails what it's trying to do with the visuals. Or did you think they were actually pretty?
Yes.
Because those are very different things.
Yes. No, I think for the NES, very colorful. And that's usually something we talk about. NES can feel a little muted in color, but each stage really impressed me. Like, they got super creative with the pixel art stuff. When it wasn't pixel art, the stage had a different color and look to it. And so, like, with the limited scope of what you can do with an arcade game with just the same thing over and over, I think they got creative, and I really enjoyed looking at the game. Bonus points for the title screen, the like bubble, the colorful bubbles floating up. I love that.
It's pretty basic, and so I found myself bored by it, but I felt it fit the game really, really well. And I love the look of Bob and Bub. They're great characters.
It's Bob and Bob, dude.
But
no, you're right. It's Bob and Bub. Wait, Bubble. No, it's Bub.
Bubble
and Bob.
Booby.
Yes, you keep going there. Did you play a different game this week?
That's why you like the graphics so much.
I agree with you that it's colorful, but man, again, it is a trip. It is bright, somewhat assaulting, and insulting, and onslaughting. It's not pleasant. It's kind of like the music, I would say, is that it's good for what they're going for, and they nailed that, but then over and over again it just hurts. That's what I have to say about that. That's the end of my sentences when I try to be like Kenny. You can keep looking around there. If you don't like Bubble Bobble, or if you do like Bubble Bobble and want to play more Bubble Bobble games, then there are tons of sequels. Here's the thing, we didn't say it enough times during this episode, so I need to get it all done right now. I'll just name a few of them in no particular order, but the direct sequel was Rainbow Islands, the story of Bubble Bobble 2. But then there's other games like Bubble Bobble Part 2, Bubble Memories, Bubble Bobble Revolution, which you dance with bubbles. I just made that up.
There's no way.
I would play that game.
Rainbow Island Evolution. There's so many
gosh.
different ones. Yeah, there's just so many. And then you can play this one relatively easy today. Kenny already mentioned, but it's on the, well, relatively, I guess, but maybe you're about to mention, Kenny, but you at least played it on the NES Classic Edition.
Yep.
Which it's available on. I know that it is on, or was on the like Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, those kinds of things. And then it's come out in various like classics or compilations along the way. So
I think it would be unfair of us, especially where there's parts of this game that we've been kind of critical of, to not point out while we're talking about how it's aged, how popular this game was. This game made tons and tons of top 100 best video game, NES game, whatever lists over the years. Because it was wildly popular in its day.
Well, we played it on the NES. We also mentioned it came out on the arcade, but did we mention that it also came out on the Amiga, the Atari, the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum, the Game Boy, the Game Gear, the Game Boy Color, popular. The Sega Master System, Sega Saturn, PlayStation? Like, yeah. I mean,
in summation, I said that, but not overtly.
It's only $19.50 used if you want the NES cartridge.
Not bad.
But if you want it new, you're going to be paying nearly $400. And I don't typically say this because the majority of us aren't like graded collectors that we need that top tier juice. But if you did want a graded copy of the NES cartridge of Bubble Bobble, that's only going to run you $2,723 right now.
I thought it'd be more. Not gonna lie.
No big deal.
More?
Yeah, no, like Kenny said, I knew about this game, but without knowing this game, maybe I should start collecting.
Start with Bubble
You heard
Bobble.
how expensive it was, and that's what makes you want to start collecting.
Right. Nolan's hobbies, he's like, you know what? I just want to do something for fun that's not going to stress me out. Let me build keyboards that are like $500 a pop.
Fun.
Probably that's small. And then let me collect $3,000 games.
I mean, when I got all this money, what you want me to do?
He's got rich taste.
And that's what we have to say about that.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every one of our episodes, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the vote to swing one way or the other. Nolan, I think you've been most overt with your feelings this week. Would you like to start us off?
Sure. I would be. I'm gonna be embarrassed for both of you if you have something stupid to say here. I absolutely give this game my vote for New Game Plus status. I think it's so simple to pick up and play. In 2021, I think it's aged well in that regard, in that you can have simple fun with this game, and it's a solid challenge. While the difficulty curve is all over the place, it's not really a curve. It's more of a pulse of someone dying. But it's super fun. I played it a lot this week, a lot, and I didn't expect to like it that much. Yes, the song is repetitive. Turn the music off and listen to something else. I think it's a great port of a classic arcade to the home console. Super good. Loved it.
That's one thumbs up. I'll go next and say that Bobble is bubble boring. And it is repetitive. I know that some of these arcade games are, so I know that we played, I don't remember what I gave all these games, but I mentioned Frogger, I mentioned Dig Dug, I didn't mention Ladybug, but that was an arcade game that kind of took us all by surprise, and we're like, this is kind of good. So those games are meant to have a limited scope of how you play and what you do, and then let you do that over and over again. There is a lot of variety here with 100 levels. That's insane. And it was created to be a quarter eater or a token eater. So you get in and you can nail the first few levels fairly easily, but then the difficulty curve really ramps up. It just gets up there very, very quickly because they want you to fail, put in more coins, and make them rich. And so this is basically about capitalism, and we should tear down the system. It says something when I regularly wanted to stop playing this game this week to go back to an ASCII version of a game that we played the week before.
You didn't play ASCII. It just means that game was really good. That doesn't mean this one's bad.
I dreaded having to play this game this week for two reasons. One, because I got very hooked to the last game that I still haven't beaten yet. But then two, because I really do feel like this game doesn't have enough to offer. The only uniqueness are the different stages, but I'm doing the same thing. It's not fun. And just catching them in a bubble and then popping them, it really doesn't. Even the challenge isn't fun to try to crest and get better than. I'm going to end the same way that I started because I planned these things ahead, Kenny, when I talk. But I just really do believe the Bobble is bubble boring, and it's not going to get my vote for New Game Plus certification. And I hope Kenny doesn't. I think that he will, but I hope that he doesn't because I don't think that this game is good.
I hate that I'm this guy sometimes, and this week I hate it especially. I under NGP status, here's what I wrote. I don't know. I'll decide in the moment.
Nice.
I think it's a very cute, very unique game that I can 100% appreciate people's nostalgia for and see someone falling into, vibing with, getting after it. Like, I have no problem with Nolan being like, I had so much fun this week. I had a blast. That's fine. It's a great game. I think it was very unique and novel in some of the things that it offered, and I think those are worth honoring. Like, I'm not going to say this game doesn't deserve to be in top 100 lists of some of the best video games of all time, because I think it was revolutionary. It was super popular. It did some very intentional things that I think were very good. And maybe it's because I overhyped that potential, but I also didn't have that much fun with it this week. I enjoyed myself a little bit at times, sort of.
Retro Gaming Podcast, huh?
Yeah, but here's what happens throughout the week. I play a game.
Finish.
Sometimes it starts great, sometimes it starts terribly, but always my early opinions are kind of bad. I play the game more and more and more and more and more, and the more I do, the more obvious it becomes whether or not a game for me today in 2021 is enjoyable. I think this is a banger of a game in the 1980s that's not nearly as fun to play in 2021. I just don't think it forward proofs very well. And so I hate this because I think it's a game people ought to know about, but it's not a New Game Plus title for me. Great game, no NGP.
That
Sorry.
means that Bobble is not New Game Plus certified. You might have different opinions, and you can let us know. Nolan has done that on this episode, and you can do it afterwards by sending us emails or dropping by our Discord. We asked the question this week on YouTube what they would rate this game. Yes, New Game Plus status. No, go play something else, or have they never played it? 655 votes came in. 65% agreed with Nolan and said, yes, it's worth playing today. 9% said no, go play something else. And 26% said they've never played it before, which is weird, but also I had never played it before. Kenny,
haven't either. You realize that even is remarkable though, because almost every other game we've played, and I know this was a big title, but the majority of people are like, no, I don't know what this game is.
right?
But this one, a huge number of people were like, yeah, I played this game, I loved it. And I have no problem with that.
I was moving quickly here. And Nolan, you never played it either, right?
No.
Yeah. So this was all a fresh experience for the three of us.
Sorry, fans.
And we ended OnlyFans, and we ended in different places. I do want to hear what Garlisle had to say. I'm going to read a few commentaries from our loyal listeners. Start with Garlisle. He said, it's important for its era in fostering cooperative gameplay. Bobble today is still pretty okay. Its simplicity should make it accessible to pick up and play, but the unintuitive collision detections and some hidden mechanics take some getting used to. A handful of its levels are also definitely designed with 2 players in mind and can end up feeling pretty bad when solo. Plus, a 1-minute song for a 2-hour game can certainly wear away at one's patience. I don't think it's one of the best games ever made, but as far as old arcade games go, this one's meatier than you'd expect.
Yes.
Agreed.
And I agree the collision is like super wonky, but there is this forgiving mechanic in the game where like that's not in a lot of retro games, where if you shoot when you're about to hit an enemy, you usually get hit and lose a life. But in this game, nice, your hit takes precedence and you kill it. So that helped me out so much. But yeah,
I do wish, and maybe Garlisle doesn't do this typically, but I would have liked to know where if he had to land one place or another, which place he landed, but he didn't say. Derek wrote in and said, oh, Bobble. One of the most memorable games I rented over numerous summers as a kid. I bought this game a couple years ago, and this week my brother and I decided to take up the task and finally attempt to beat this game. Using all the continues the world had to offer, we still could not beat the level 100 boss named Super Drunk. Nevertheless, it was still 2 hours of great entertainment, reliving a small part of our childhood. While the game can get annoying and chaotic, it has beautiful charm. It's getting the NGP stamp of approval from this extremely biased guy. Always will be one of my favorite NES games.
Some of the names are silly. I didn't know that was the boss name. They're like when time is up and that creature shows up to kill you. The thing's name is Baron von Blubba.
That's a name.
That's a name.
One of the things that Derek pointed out, though, and then I think we mentioned, maybe didn't even talk about enough, but it just fundamentally changes the game when you can't play it 2 players anymore, especially when the game was created first and foremost to be played 2 players. I think that is a huge factor. And Derek played with his brother this week. Like, it would have been different if I'm sitting down with you, Nolan or Kenny or someone else. Really my 2 only friends, but still I would have rather played Dungeon Crawl. Pokemali said, hi, longtime listener, first time writing in. Bobble was the first game I beat as a kid that had multiple endings. My little brother and I would play this game together, but being older, I was better at the game. One day, I finally made it to the end after my brother's character had lost all his lives, only to be told I reached a bad end and I needed to try again with a friend. I was devastated, but still determined to get the good ending. My brother and I finally beat it together when on the last several levels, I made him focus on dodging everything to stay alive rather than participate in taking out the enemies. We did it and got the happy ending. Thank you for reading this commentary and keep up the awesome work on the podcast.
What an amazing memory.
I'm telling you, we missed out.
The 2-player?
It's a trend,
experience?
yeah. And I could see that. I could see that.
Everybody's playing with their sibling. I would have been able to play with my brother back then and now if I wanted to, honestly. Nolan, would you have been able to, or would your father have played with you? Because I know you played GoldenEye together.
I did play a lot of GoldenEye with Mark, but my brother played with me too. We would have played this, yeah.
And then Kenny, you don't have a brother.
No, stepbrother that I played a lot of Nintendo games with.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if Nolan even knows that.
I
But yeah, so it was on the table. I actually think we might have even had this cart like in our closet somewhere at some point in our collection, but it was never one we went to. I never played it.
And then finally, Ara wrote in a long dissertation. I know that nobody likes when I do this, but I wanted to include some of his thoughts, so I cherry-picked a few of those ideas. It takes seconds to understand enough to play Bobble and just minutes to complete that understanding. This game was built to be approachable for someone who has never played a video game before, and it shows. It was also built to be played cooperatively, and one of the first games to ever build for co-op first. Where so many games in the puzzle platforming genre are essentially puzzle games where you can run and jump, BB is a perfect blend of platforming and puzzle solving demands. It's an addictiveness that never lets up. This is one of those just one more go games with the magic to make hours vanish. And this is all against the backdrop of one of the best gaming tunes ever composed. We're in Tetris Type A territory here. Whew.
I don't know.
The only substantial negative criticism I can point this game's way cannot even be directly squarely at Bobble, but is merely an inherent flaw of the platform. The true enjoyment of this game is in fighting your way higher every climb, the drive to push further, and the satisfaction in overcoming a stage that seemed impossible last time. But when you can just insert another credit to continue from where you are, stages don't need to be overcome to be solved. They can just be boringly brute forced. Games like Bobble foster that most admirable trait of human trait of agency, to strive and to conquer, to remain resilient and to resist the blows of failure. He obviously gives it NGP.
Right. Interesting calling it a puzzle platformer, because it totally is, especially later. I didn't think about it that way, but you do have to solve some of them in like how you have to kill the enemies, because the stage forces you to. That's cool. I forgot about that.
For now, we're going to set Bobble and the little salt to the side, and
y'all, it's on y'all. Like,
I am
don't know
proud
what you're talking about.
this.
You clearly don't.
I'm still really torn.
Kenny
I'm still
knows
torn
that he's
because
wrong. It's fine.
I get both. No, I don't think I'm wrong. I'm torn.
I'm certainly not wrong. It's
play Crawl. You're gonna keep playing it for weeks, and you're gonna give games not New Game Plus because you're playing Crawl
until I finish it.
Yes,
that's what you think.
Yes.
Okay, listen. I'm not going to put every game up against Crawl. That would just be unfair. Crawl's not perfect by any means. We're not going to randomly select from our retro master list because it is a Patreon pool. During that Patreon pool part is where Tom inserts the audio. This week we are randomly selecting from a much smaller pool of games that were submitted by some of our delightful patrons. We have games in here like Super Metroid from Wardonis, Resident Evil 2 from McBain, Atomic Robo Kid from Joseph. We've got Planescape Torment from Thomas, Dino Crisis for the PlayStation from Ramiel. We've got Double Dragon 2 and Star Fox in here from Zach. We've got some people in here that I think are just giving up because they've never had their game picked in our Patreon pools, so they're like, I'm just trying to submit it again. But we've got games in here like Jade Empire, the Lord of the Rings games, Breath of Fire 3, Bad News Baseball. There's some good ones and there's some maybe not so good ones, but from that much smaller list, we are randomizing now. We are going to be playing a 1998 action role-playing video game developed and published by Square. That is not Final Fantasy.
Okay. It
is a sequel to a novel written by Hideaki Sina. Ooh,
what
that's not bad.
This?
I like sequels.
but it's a video game sequel from a novel. Do you like
Sure,
that?
maybe it'll work.
Kenny
I
doesn't
don't know.
read.
This game was submitted by Michael and Corey, 2 different patrons.
Okay.
Michael submitted it twice. Corey submitted it once. The game is called Parasite Eve.
Wowzers, wowzers, wow.
You know?
Okay. I know of. I have no idea. No
Right.
idea. But I was introduced to this game when I was creating that PlayStation relaxing playlist, and it had that music in it. And I did very slight research. It looks so good. I think, Dustin, it's super story driven.
Here's the thing, dude. Here's so many things.
Are you gonna read it?
PlayStation JRPG. Is it JRPG? Yeah,
Square?
JRPG.
Square.
Square 1998. All of those have the recipe for success, and then the 5th and final recipe is my wife just went out of town.
So you're gonna beat it.
You're gonna
If
play
I
this
ha-
game so
if
much.
I had one more, if I had beaten Dungeon Crawl by now, then I would be even more excited about this game. But for now, it does not get my vote for New Game Plus
Okay.
status until I can finish Dungeon Crawl.
I'm excited to play this. I love that era of PlayStation. If it wasn't Resident Evil, I'm happy it's this.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it randomly selected a game that 2 patrons picked,
That's
because we
sick,
kind of knocked out.
Absolutely, that's fun. And
a couple of
PlayStation's
birds.
fun. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a
Yes,
minute.
yeah.
Love PlayStation. That's my baby. So grab a copy of Parasite Eve for the PlayStation. Play it along with us this week for next week's Patreon pool episode.
And for those of you that have hot takes on Parasite Eve, or you just really love the game or whatever, you can leave commentary in our Discord. So please join our Discord. It's a great community. It's a great place to be. We just received an email from someone who let us know they were joining after listening for a long time. So be that next person. Go to ngppodcast.com and click join us in Discord.
I know we mentioned someone in that submitted commentary for the first time. I think, Nolan, you're referencing, I think Jordan was who sent in an email. We read it I read it to the guys before we recorded this episode. Super cool. Anytime that listeners send us in game submissions or commentary, but especially when you take a few moments just to say like, hey, thank you, or I've been listening for a while. Jordan's not even caught up. He's 75 episodes behind, but he wrote in. So if that's you and you haven't sent us a note that you're listening or watching yet, please do. We'd love to know.
Do it.
We also want to say a big thank you not only to Jordan, but to those of you who support us on an ongoing basis on patreon.com, especially our newest additions to that family. Jumper, who joined us as a patron for the first time. Jumper, thanks. And our newest producer, whose moniker I'm sure I'm going to butcher, Nahuel. Nahuel? Nawal.
Narwhal.
This is
Narwhal.
not Narwhal.
Baby.
Same joke. Nahuel. Thank you for joining our family of producers. You're joining the likes of Amarlian, Austin, Ben, Bethany Fox, Brojim, Carrie, Dan the Man, Francesca, Corey, Maxima, Secret Duck of Evermore, Shauna, Thomas, Unbedavable, Wardonis, William, and Zion. And we want to say an especially big thank you to Antonin, Garlisle, and Brojim, our amazing director level supporters. You guys have our hearts eternally.
Look at you, bro, Jim, getting the double shutout for both being a producer and a director. Kenny's going to fix that, but we love you, buddy. You can find us on our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Listen directly on any podcast provider so that you are the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. This episode was edited and produced by our Bubble friend, Tom Tate. Join us next week as we play the Patreon pool selected Parasite Eve. That's a mouthful. I'm still Nolan's friend.
I'm Kenny.
I'm right.
I should have said I'm still playing Dungeon Crawl.
We all know that.
Yeah, we all know it.
And this has been New Game Plus.